everybody. This is Ryan Borochovitz, literary manager for Cup of Hemlock Theatre, and my favorite film adaptation of a play is Copenhagen, the 2002 film directed by Howard Davies for the BBC. It is based on Copenhagen, the play by Michael Frayn, which premiered at the National Theatre in London in 1988. The play and the film both tell the story of a private meeting held in Nazi-occupied Denmark in 1941 between physicists Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg. Former friends, but on opposite sides of the war, the two discuss the topic of nuclear fission with consequences that may have radically changed the tides of history. But more importantly, the play is a nuanced meta-commentary on the nature of uncertainty and how we can only reflect upon past events from the privileged vantage point of hindsight. I stumbled upon this film by accident, actually. Back when I was doing my undergrad at York University, I would frequently visit the Sound and Moving Image Library on campus, or SMIL as we used to call it. And I would just like to browse the shelves and find interesting looking films that I had never seen before. So on one such visit, I saw the DVD of Copenhagen, and having read the play before and very much enjoying it, as I have with so many of Frayn's plays, I thought it was a no-brainer and didn't think twice about taking it out and watching it that evening. And boy, am I glad I did, because, oh man, is it ever good. So, I recognize that this might require a little explanation as far as choices go. While this is certainly an excellent film, and I love it, I would be lying if I said that I couldn't think of better films that happen to be based on plays. Some examples that come to mind are The Seventh Seal, A Few Good Men, Anomalisa, Moonlight, The Two Popes, etc., etc., the list could go on. But what differentiates Copenhagen from all of those that I've just listed is that in each of those cases, I've never actually read or seen those works as plays, and thus I don't feel like I can adequately judge them as adaptations of their source material. And slight sidebar, I actually briefly considered choosing Vanya on 42nd Street as my choice for favorite film adaptation of a play, but the more I thought about it, that movie is less of a proper adaptation as much as it is a glorified pro shot with a gimmicky framing device. Well, don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore it, but that's what it is, let's not mince words. Now, with all of that in mind, I think Copenhagen is a perfect example of a film that is only more enjoyable if you have prior familiarity with the play. And as a result, I would say that it is an adaptation at its finest. On one hand, it is a startlingly faithful rendering of the original script. The fact that most of it is maintaining this three-character dialogue structure of the play really gives it the feel of watching a stage play. That said, what I think makes this an extraordinary adaptation is the way that it truly utilizes the tools of filmmaking to their greatest potential. Anybody who's read the play knows that it has basically zero stage directions, unless you count the speech prefixes. And as a result, it always gives directors a lot of freedom to fill in the world as best they see fit. This film does a great job of that. So every piece of set and costume design is absolutely gorgeous. To use the main example, a lot of the setting is in the Bohr's house in 1941, and every single prop and piece of furnishing really gives this house this lived-in, textured feel. By contrast, when we see the house again in the present-day scenes, it is completely desolate and abandoned and with refuse everywhere. It makes for a very stark contrast. Speaking of the present-day scenes, they're all lit and photographed with this soft blue filter and this very dense fog, which is a perfect way of establishing this metaphysical distance between the original time period of 1941 and the characters today looking back after they're dead and gone, enhancing this real state of limbo that we feel in these present-day scenes. This separation of time periods is perfectly established in the opening scene of the film, when the Bohrs get off of a contemporary-looking bus that has an ad for Phantom of the Opera posted on the side of it. Now, this is particularly clever because Phantom of the Opera debuted in 1986, 2 years prior to the stage debut of Copenhagen. That said, because Phantom has been such a blockbuster mainstay of the musical stage pretty much since its release, the ad on the side of this bus doesn't necessarily relate to the 1980s and doesn't seem anachronistic if it relates to any version of the present. Are they getting off this bus in the present of 1988? Are they getting off the bus in the present of 2002 when the film was made? Or are they getting off the bus in the present of 2020 when I rewatched the film just now? This creates the sense that it is not necessarily a specific moment of the present in which the dead and gone characters are viewing their past events, but it combines all of them together into this atemporal limbo from which they are always reflecting on 1941 and potentially always will be. But I think the greatest point in this film's favor is its cinematography, expertly handled by director of photography Ian Wilson. Hats off to him, he did an excellent job. Seriously, every frame of this film looks like a goddamn painting, but in particular, it is the camera work and the movement of the camera that I think really shines through in the finished product. But to talk about that, we're going to need to get into a closer look of... So my favorite scene in this film is pretty much the climax. So what I'm about to say might count as spoilers. So if you haven't seen the film and don't want to have it spoiled, I highly recommend you pause this video right now. Don't worry, I'll wait for you when you get back, and go watch the movie. It's great, you'll love it, and then come back here and rewatch the rest of this. Or if you don't have access to the film right now, I recommend you just skip ahead to the time code that's appearing on your screen somewhere right now. Spoiler zone after that time code, you've been warned. So after the dead and gone versions of the characters have already reflected upon that meeting in 1941 twice, they take one third attempt at it, really trying to create this final draft of what could have been, treating it in the form of a thought experiment of the way things might have turned out differently. In this scene, the camera, which I'll note has rarely been entirely stationary during any of the preceding scenes, but it begins to glide and swoop between the characters, moving around them in circular motions as if they are the nuclei of atoms. It becomes very clear from the visual symbolism of this movement that Heisenberg and Bohr are these two elementary particles who could have collided in this moment to create devastating destruction had things gone a different way. And in the pivotal moment, when Heisenberg realizes what his mistake was, the camera stops spinning. The two figures stand very still in these amazing looking tableaus as the camera begins pushing in closer and closer and closer. Heisenberg is doing the calculations in his head. Camera moves in on Bohr, who realizes what happened, or could have happened. And then, in this moment of increasing intensity, cut to a mushroom cloud. Boom, explosion. This is what might have happened if the meeting had gone differently, and the Germans had gotten the bomb. Now, you could create a version of this effect in the theater. You can have the actors playing Heisenberg and Bohr walking around in circles to create this circular effect. But it really wouldn't be the same as what is handled so masterfully in this film. And the way I see it, if you're going to go to the trouble to take a work for the stage and adapt it to film, you better have a pretty good idea of what you can do with it in your medium that the other media can't. Who is my standout performance? So this is really tough for me because all three of the actors are really working at the top of their game, and I think they each deserve a bit of a shout out. Daniel Craig, as Heisenberg, feels like the big star, but we need to remember that this was actually 4 years before Casino Royale, and I actually like to think that his performance in this film could be viewed as his audition tape for eventually playing 007. He's super suave and dapper, but he brings a lot of that vulnerability to the role that we do later see him bringing to Bond. Stephen Ray as Niels Bohr is also really good in this. See, because Bohr is somewhat of a mentor to Heisenberg, in a lot of their scenes together, you really get the sense that Bohr is supposed to be the calm, composed adult in contrast to Heisenberg's petulant child. And Ray plays it that way in most of the scenes. but there's a lot of moments where he almost lets his inner child shine through. Several key moments, especially when they're recreating this meeting that they had, he turns away in a huff like a child having a temper tantrum. And I think this is an excellent little bit of nuance that is brought to the performance because it really gives a sense of how frightening it is for Bohr to realize what might have come of this horrible meeting if things had turned out very differently. But I think if I have to pick just one, the real MVP of this film is Francesca Annis as Margareta Bohr. She might feel like a bit of a thankless role, especially compared to the two very showy scientists that take up most of the breathing space. But she takes this role and just owns it with the same power and intensity that she brought to Lady Macbeth in the 1971 film. Like us, she is the non scientist in the room, and therefore it is through her that we need to untangle all of this talk about fission and understand what's really going on in plain language. I don't know about you, but I don't think I could ask for a better audience surrogate than Francesca Annis. She is amazing in this. So, yeah, that's pretty much why Copenhagen 2002 is my favorite film adaptation of a play. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you watch it in case everything I've said thus far has not been enough of an endorsement. It is available for streaming on Broadway HD, Drama Online, and Digital Theater Plus, so if you're subscribed to any of those, you can find it very easily. And yeah, after you've given it a watch, please get down in the comment section and tell me what you thought of it. Did you like it? If so, what did you like? Anything I missed out on talking about? And if you didn't like it, well, then I'm afraid you and I cannot be friends. Nah, I'm just kidding. We can be friends, but hey, still, get down in the comments and tell me why you didn't like it, and maybe we can have an interesting dialogue about that. Anyway, that's been it for me. This is Ryan Borochovitz from Cup of Hemlock Theater. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Take it easy, everyone.